I'm
so you can
here.
hear me. Okay.
Okay.
I don't see everybody.
All right.
Now, that might not be a problem if I can get everybody on the same screen. Robert, I still see you.
We are live, Sam. We are
I
live.
understand. I understand. But I want to have a full screen.
That group thing you had was better than what you have now.
Well, that's the group layout, but I don't have a full screen. I see you and Lisa now. I don't see me and the slide. Do you see your slide, Lisa? Can you hear me, Lisa?
No,
You're
not
muted.
it.
Unmute yourself, Lisa.
Sorry, I can see you and I can hear you and I can see Pastor Smith.
Okay, I do not have a full screen. Tell me what's going on, Robert.
Hello. So we are live. I'm just here to talk about.
Samuel, I see two Samuel Jordans down there, and Lisa's slides
you
are
only
on
see
the
one.
second one. But I see down at the bottom.
What are you saying, Glenn? Yeah, that's
See,
not
I
a
see
problem.
Lisa's slides. Okay.
I understand, but I don't have a full screen is what I'm asking Robert about. Now, Robert, if I remove you from the screen, that may or may not help.
I'm going to I'm going to take myself out. You can continue
Okay.
with the show. It's perfect. The images are perfect. You can
Good
continue with the
enough.
show.
Thank you. Okay. We'll work something out. I should expect to, all right, friends. It's live and we're going to go on air. Can everybody see the full screen? Okay. Good evening, friends. Samuel Jordan with Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition and the Black News USA broadcast. We are broadcasting tonight from Philadelphia, the unceded territory of the Piscataway, and they have not given it up yet. This is still occupied Baltimore. But we have guests tonight, and we also want to make sure that you are acquainted with our production. The Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition and Black News USA is a new collaboration. And what we intend over this next few weeks is to develop a network with at least 8 destinations so that we can be linked anywhere around the nation as we build out a network. It will feature news from Baltimore, the region, the area itself, and national news. Our guests will help determine the flow of the show. In fact, we're going to trust our guests to do just that. Our co-host is Minister Glenn Smith. He's the vice president of the Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition. We couldn't work without him. Our guest tonight, a special guest. I'll just simply introduce her briefly, then she'll talk about our first question to her. Our guest is Attorney Lisa Hodges. She is the executive director of the Westport Community Economic Development Corporation. These are the champions of Westport economic development. And in fact, you've heard them in the news lately in the so-called Battle of the Maglev. We'll have her speak about that. We'll have her talk about development in Westport, but also a few other questions. And of course, she's free to address any matter of interest. Lisa Hodges, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much for inviting me on to talk about Westport and the development that we are poised to see, and then the barrier, which is the development of maglev. So I can't see the presentation. I'm going to just, do we have it up?
Yes. Can you see that screen with the second Samuel Jordan?
Okay. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to kind of wing it and say, okay, there we go. Yep. All right. So if you could, so going to the second slide, I just want to talk a little bit about Westport CEDC. So Westport CEDC was formed in 2013, originally formed to serve Westport. Our mission is to promote economic, equitable development, access to the waterfront, and really to improve the lives of residents, workers, and business owners in this area through the power of collective impact. We have a wholly owned subsidiary, which is a community land trust, so we can further affordable housing development and permanent affordability. We are in site control of 3.28 acres of land in Mount Winans to develop a regional community resource and wellness center. We also are about providing affordable retail space in our commercial corridors. We were awarded a Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative grant to give small homeowner improvement loans. We engage businesses, and we have a clean sweep ambassador program to keep our commercial corridors clean and to service our urban farm, which is located, we just launched in the fall on our regional community center site. Our signature program is Harbor West Collaborative, which is an MOU, an agreement to engage in collective impact with the neighborhoods of Westport, Lakeland, St. Paul, and Mount Winans. Next slide. So we want to talk tonight about maglev. Recently, just a little background, this project has been a long time coming. A lot of planning and development has gone into a magnetic levitation train between DC and Baltimore initially, but ostensibly it should go between DC and New York. And the concept is, high-speed rail to make it faster, cheaper, more convenient for those who can afford to buy that ticket. Last year, the Federal Railroad Administration shepherded an environmental study. We made comments on that. A lot of other people made comments on that. And based on the public feedback that the FRA got, they chose to pause the development and environmental study to get even better feedback from the community. In addition, the kind of proponents of this project, the Baltimore, Washington, I think Regional Rail Association, or we'll call it maglev for the purposes of this presentation, were given a license to to install this magnetic levitation system along a defunct rail line. Part of what they need to do in order to install this system is to acquire private land and get licensed to use some public land. One of the things that they, kind of a ground floor issue for them was to acquire property in Westport along the waterfront that is currently being developed by Stonewall Capital, which is a private developer who purchased the property from Weller Development, who is a partner in the Port Covington development, who was the development entity for that. Let me just speak correctly about that. So we entered into the equation as a community advocate and as an entity that wants to have equitable development, that also wants to see the community of Westport and the waterfront neighbors of Westport not have a 43-acre site, which is the total Westport waterfront undeveloped parcel, lay fallow for 15 years and be used as a staging area for this project, which may or may not happen. So I'm going to get into kind of the nuts and bolts of what we know now about the project. If you could go to the next slide.
We're going to try to reach that.
Roots, resources, and real facts.
Okay.
So on this slide, we have the website where you can go and get more information. Thumbnail of the project, the cost to build currently is anywhere between $10 and $15 billion. There are 3 alternatives that the environmental study kind of pinpointed, came down to, which was a no build option, a J option, and a J1 option. Both the J1 and the J and J1 options require a station in Cherry Hill and a Westport surface facility on the 43 acres of waterfront property. There are elevated portions of the route, so it's not all underground. Some is above ground. And the environmental impact analysis is being refined. As I said earlier, the Federal Railroad Administration chose to pause. The ticket prices that we were quoted were $70 per person, as opposed to the MARC train, which is less than $20 per person. And the travel time between Baltimore and DC on the MARC is anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes. And the maglev would cut the time only to 15 minutes. So there's not really a huge time saving for that. Next slide shows the route in Baltimore. And one of the things that we questioned the maglev developers about was, why is this the first leg of the project that you want to build? The project, as I said earlier, slated to go from DC to New York. However, this segment was the first segment that they want to build, and they're doing all of the engineering for and all of the environmental impact study and whatnot. And we believe that the answer is because much of the route is either through parkland or through communities of color. And we think that, and in fact, Wayne Rogers, who's the CEO of BWRR, said this was cheaper. This is a cheap way to go, and they think it would be faster. Next slide. So the station concept requires private property acquisition and large surface lot in Cherry Hill. So, and right by the light rail station. So what does this mean? To have a surface parking lot by the waterfront in this area means a couple of things. There will be traffic going to the parking lot. There would be security concerns for the parking lot. And that is a huge swath of land close to the waterfront that would be car-centric rather than, transit oriented. And, for these communities, that's a problem. That's not a really good use of the land. Next slide. So the total land area, this is a map depicting the total land area that this project would need in green, highlighted in green. So on to the right, you see a kind of a rectangular shape. That's the Westport waterfront 43-acre site. Then you have the next kind of segment, a triangular segment, is in Cherry Hill. The southern portion is close to the Middle Branch waterfront and would include surface parking lots. On the other side of 295, that little triangle at the top in the middle shows where another surface lot would be, and miscellaneous construction is depicted. One of the problems with this is that to the kind of north of that triangle is the historic Mount Auburn Cemetery, which is a historic African-American cemetery. Many notable folks are buried there, including founders of some Black Greek organizations, family members from the Murphy family, the founder of the Afro newspaper. And it's really an important historical landmark for our community. Next slide. So some fast facts about our neighborhoods. in the Harbor West Collaborative. We have over 176 businesses. However, we don't have any banks, we don't have any job training centers located in any of our 4 neighborhoods. We've got over 250 commercial properties. We have over a quarter of our households do not have internet. However, we do have a relatively educated population, but given that, we still have an unemployment rate that is twice the national rate. So we've got kind of a mixed bag of our residents. One of the things that the maglev proponents want to always talk about is workforce development, and they have a commitment to bringing jobs and economic development. However, when we asked Wayne Rogers at one of our community meetings, what is the dollar amount that they've committed to workforce development, he didn't have an answer. He said maybe $1 million, and the like, and you can go on our Facebook page, Harbor West Collaborative, and see the recording of that. However, by comparison, Port Covington Development committed $25 million through the community benefits agreement with the city. So for a multi-billion-dollar project like maglev is proposing to be, to not have any kind of dollar figure attached to workforce development when you are planning to, kind of operate and situate yourself in a community like Westport that has such a need, it's really egregious. So we've done some work in our neighborhood around several things, but particularly with business outreach. We've done outreach to many businesses. We've done a business climate survey. We've looked at employment trends and, what are the needs of our businesses? Next slide. We've identified what are the priorities for residents, neighborhood beautification, theft prevention, as well as, improving infrastructure and youth engagement. Next slide. When it comes to transit, we find that most of our workers drive to work. Some take the bus or bike. However, bus service is inconsistent and unreliable. When we've talked to employers, that last mile is really so critical. We have in Harbor West 2 light rail stops. However, getting from those light rail stops to major employers, for example, Orlando Products, which is I think they do $20 million in gross sales a year. If you go to Raven Stadium, I think you'll see their banner there. They make the packing material, custom packing material for products that are shipped. They, have talked about the difficulty with employees getting to their work site, to the job site in our Harbor West neighborhood. They would like to have, some support getting folks from bus and rail to their site. We need better circulation in our neighborhood. And we don't have any real transit plans of how to evacuate during an emergency. And we know now, especially with what's going on in Ukraine, we need to have this kind of planning for our residents. So how has the city helped us so far? When it comes to, transportation, they've done infrastructure projects, but our businesses have not received loans or grants from the city based on our kind of climate survey. They've had limited touch points with workforce development programs hosted by the city, and no touch points with Baltimore Development Corporation, which is the economic development organization for the city. Next slide. So, we're in the process of doing the next steps with our businesses, doing more, getting more data, really connecting businesses to bio candidates, and connecting businesses to city services. And we have formed partnership with the Office of Employment Development to really, do that. I'm going to go to the slide where we have the map of the proposed development for the waterfront. So one of the things, let me just kind of transition here, one of the things that is so egregious about maglev wanting to condemn 43 acres on the waterfront is not only that it would, just kind of stymie and block kind of resident access to the waterfront, but it also would interrupt the development of the waterfront per this kind of plan. And let me just walk through just briefly what the plan kind of illustrates. To the left, parcel A is a multifamily, would probably be, a mix of senior and family development. In the middle, you see parcel B is single family housing. Right next to, in between parcel B and parcel C, is an 11-acre park that the developer, the owner, is in the process of negotiating an MOU with the city to donate that land to the city, along with the kind of trail that goes along the waterfront for public use. And we are a party to that MOU that's being negotiated, and we would be the stewards of that park. So this would be, really dedicated to the residents existing and future of Westport, and really kind of bringing together the community.
Mhm.
Parcel C, commercial development. D, E, and F, all commercial development proposed. I'm going to, if we can skip down to the equity and inclusion action plan slide. Yeah. So, we are, we're working with the developer on the waterfront to make sure that we have an equitable development, that it's inclusive. We have developed this plan. We ask our partners to identify, what is the percentage of their, kind of equity mix and membership and board members that are, communities of color and LGBTQ persons and persons with disabilities. If they don't have a percentage that reflects the population of Baltimore City percentage, we ask them to articulate recruitment, hiring, and retention plans. We want to have transparency on how they are tracking hires, and how does this relate to the transit. As I said earlier, when we talked to Wayne Rogers about workforce development and building this out, there were really kind of vague platitudes about about these things. What we really want and require from anybody doing business with us is that they are very specific about how they're going to address the disparities in employment, in engagement with folks of color and folks with disabilities and folks in the LGBTQ community. The next slide. We always like to give a shout out to our partners and funders. We have, of whom there are many: City, Foundation, and private finance. Next slide. The things that we are about and what we do, our Harbor West calendar. In addition to the advocacy for maglev, we engage in food aid, especially during the pandemic. Every Thursday, we give out free food. We are just launching a partnership with Nally Fresh, called Nally Fresh Go, and that starts tomorrow, where folks order online a fresh salad bowl. They pick it up after school, and we pay half the cost. So the salad bowls are only $5. We launched in the fall our urban farm. We're having a planning this weekend. We partner closely with Westport Neighborhood Association. And again, I mentioned earlier, we have our Community Resource Center. Next slide. This kind of just gives an overview of the work that we do, our community land trust, stewardship, and the like. And then finally, my contact information, my executive assistant's contact information, and our community organizers' information is on the slide if there are any questions that we don't get to during the presentation.
Lisa Hodges,
Yes.
thank you so much. You've opened the door to so many possibilities and opportunities in Westport, in South Baltimore. So we have a few questions that we want to ask. I'm sure some of these questions are certainly burning in the minds and of our audience. But first of all, the maglev project, how real is that a threat to your being able to accomplish what you have envisioned for Westport?
So, it's a big threat to us because even though some folks have said, oh, it's never going to happen, the reality is market forces affects everything that we do.
Yes.
We, for example, with our community land trust, in order for us to be able to acquire property that's affordable for us to acquire and rehab for inclusion in our community land trust, to make sure that it's permanently affordable, we have to be able to acquire that property at a decent price. If folks think that a project is going forward, such as maglev, and they feel like they can perhaps ask for a higher price for that property, that affects the market for us. But on the flip side, if they think that, if funders think that the maglev is going to kind of stall development for the next 15 years on the waterfront, then that affects our ability to raise money and to get work done. So from a market perspective, it definitely affects us. From a community development perspective, the danger is very real that maglev folks will, effectively kind of stall waterfront development for the next few years by keeping matter in litigation. And so what happens is things like not only our projects, but the whole Middle Branch master planning process, which is underway now, is stalled. Or, the Westport part of that is kind of put at the bottom of the priority barrel, right? Because there's so much uncertainty. Real estate development likes some measure of certainty. And if there is any uncertainty about what can happen on the waterfront, that affects our ability to do quality community development.
And Lisa, I know Baltimore is no stranger to projects coming to communities and not benefiting the community that it's coming to. As a matter of fact, it actually hinders some of the planning that has already been done in those communities. And it seems like we take a back seat when it comes to projects that have money behind it, powers that be behind it, and it really it's tough that we have nothing to fight with, and it leaves communities feeling powerless. But we have to come together and push back. I understand that you guys had a ruling in court, and is that situation finalized? There's no appeal process for that?
So where the court process is, the BWRR, the maglev folks, filed an action for condemnation of the 43-acre site on the waterfront. The owner, Stonewall Capital, filed a motion to dismiss. They won at the trial court level. The maglev folks appealed that, and I think at the Court of Special Appeals, they won on one singular issue. And where the case stands is it's been sent back down to the trial court. And I think where we are now is it's got to go through, kind of a new ruling on that issue. Interesting thing is that the one issue, there were other issues that the Court of Special Appeals did not decide on. And there are a couple of technical things, but they do have a lot of merit. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to win in the end. However, as with everything, it's a matter of time and money, right? How much time does the property owner have, and how much money does he have to be able to fight maglev? He's not a poor man, but there are limited resources to pursue this. And the maglev folks they're going to the state to get money, they're going to the federal government to get money, and they've got millions and millions of dollars allocated to them to just kind of play around with, to explore the feasibility of maglev, and then also to kind of lobby for this project.
I want to raise this issue too with you, Lisa, in this sense. We're going to be, of course, having as many people monitor this question with maglev. It simply seems to be a power grab assisted not only by the courts, but by $10 billion that's being spread around somewhere. So it raises some ethical questions, perhaps. Okay, now we do know that our governor went to Japan, fell in love with maglev, came back to Maryland, and the Japanese government had promised that they would build it. That sounds like a deal.
It does sound like a deal. And I mean, I think, one of the lessons learned in looking at development worldwide is that, especially in African countries, some Asian countries have done infrastructure projects and they bring their own workers over. So the workforce development that is promised doesn't ever, end up being a reality. A lot of these jobs are skilled jobs that it takes to build maglev. It is a technology that we don't have here, and we don't, there's no plan for developing that skill set amongst our workforce. And so that's very concerning. But the other thing is, look, this is a long-term project. They have not done any of the work for the rest of the line up to New York. In order for this to work and to make any kind of sense, it really has to go from DC to New York, and the work just hasn't been done. So the question we as Marylanders and as Baltimoreans need to ask ourselves is, why are we the first leg of this really speculative journey? And why have they chosen this pathway to go through a historically African-American neighborhood? And Wayne Rogers answered that question himself. He said, because it's cheaper. We asked him directly, why are you looking at a stop in Cherry Hill rather than in downtown? Would it not make more sense to have a high-speed rail stop close to the center of commerce, close to existing rail? And he said, because it's cheaper.
Well, Lisa, we have seen those plans of, of course, speculative and highly fanciful, of maglev stop right in the middle of the harbor. And it was already clear to everyone even remotely associated with that project that that's not where they wanted it, and that's certainly not where it was going to be built. So that issue about where to position it raises the very same issues after the historic Eisenhower Interstate Highway program was underway, that the builders of these transit projects would actually target African American communities for devastation, for destruction. And in fact, our co-host, Minister Smith, I call him sometimes a survivor of the Highway to Nowhere in Baltimore. But that's what this is again, totally deliberate destruction of a historic African-American community, and based on the fact that the land prices are themselves artificially listed, artificially established what the land price is. Now, there's another issue that we hear often, because I want to lead this to another question, that there might not be that many residents in Westport who want to pay $120, $180 to get to Washington, D.C. in 15 minutes.
Listen, I don't think there are that many residents in the Baltimore metropolitan area that want to do that. Listen, once you get to Cherry Hill, you're almost in DC anyway. Once you get on 295, you are there. So, we have to ask ourselves the question, are folks from Hunt Valley, folks from Green Spring Valley, folks from Timonium going to drive to Cherry Hill, park their cars on a surface lot, right, to go to DC? It will take them longer to drive from wherever they are to get to Cherry Hill and then park on these lots and to catch a quick train for $140 round trip just to get to DC. And where is the stop going to be in DC? Because DC is not having it, right? DC is not having, the stop be somewhere that's not convenient to Union Station and close to Union Station. So I think, you're right. This is not a well thought out
Right.
plan. It is clearly a grab. And one of the things that we believe and that we heard when we talked to Wayne Rogers was that one of his options in his thought process is, well, if maglev doesn't turn out, we'll come back to the community. He actually said this: we'll come back to the community. We'll want to develop it. Well, why would we put our chips in your basket when we have somebody here that we've already started negotiating with, who's already shown that he can be responsive to our request for change in the project? He's already going to be donating land to the city for a public park that he's agreed that should be the first thing that we kind of, develop and program out. Why would we put him with somebody else? It just makes absolutely no sense.
Well, what we hear is that developer, Stonewall, actually purchased the land, knowing quite well that there was this threat of eminent domain. And I think Wayne Rogers and his group, Baltimore, Washington Rapid Rail, offered some pittance of a price. I don't know if it was in good faith, but that was an extreme risk of quite a bit of money to risk developing this project with that kind of force and pressure on the courts. Now, the city has, I think, been relatively consistent, but at least most recently, in rejecting this project.
Right.
Why doesn't that make a difference?
So part of the way that BWRR got their, kind of license from the Public Service Commission, they got a couple of things. They got, the license to kind of revive a defunct rail line. They got a license to use, if they were in fact a railroad, which the Public Service Commission did not say that they were in their opinion of this, what they were kind of allowing BWRR to revive. If they did in fact have a railroad, that there were certain conditions that would go along with that. One, they could use the real estate law to condemn pursuant to certain conditions, but they had to get city authorization for any city right-of-ways, any city land, any of that. And so there was a resolution that very generally said, we, the city of Baltimore, authorize moving forward in a very general way. However, you have to come back to us when you have more information. And I think that resolution was passed in 2016. So there are a couple of issues on the table. One, has the authorization lapsed? And then two, even if it hasn't lapsed, has BWRR come back with the information that's needed to take the next phase of authorization from the city? And I think, as you stated, it's very clear that the city would not take the second phase of authorization that's needed in order to give BWRR all the authority that they need to condemn and to use that property.
But it sounds as though the matter is completely in the hands of this court without much leverage being in the hands of residents or Baltimore voters. Is that how you see this issue? I mean, I want to move to a couple of other questions, but it seems as though the court, which has already shown that it can flip, these were not the same courts and judges, but it can flip. And we're looking for, where's the leverage? How do residents of Baltimore get leverage in this matter?
So I think through our city council, because as I said, they've got to, the city council can rescind the resolution. The city council can also make a strong statement that they are not going to move forward with the second piece of that authorization. And then also with the Public Service Commission, because they are the ones that gave this kind of vague opinion about what they were transferring. Folks need to hold their feet to the fire to say, look, you did not, you did not specify what exactly you were transferring. What they said in their opinion was, if one can revive a defunct railroad for technology such as this, then what we are transferring is the ability to condemn this property. They did not make that decision. So I think there are a lot of decision points on the table. We need advocates, and we do have advocates all across the state, from environmental advocates to residents in very wealthy neighborhoods who are against this, to majority African American neighborhoods. The bird watchers are against it. There's a whole broad coalition of folks who are against maglev, and we've joined with them to advocate for equity, for against this project, and to really kind of squash this. There are a couple of pieces of legislation that are moving through the state legislature right now. One of them is to declare that magnetic levitation technology does not qualify as a railroad. The other is to bar the state from funding this project in any way. And I apologize, I don't have the status of those two bits of legislation with me right now.
Certainly. But we would want you, Lisa, to make this short list, long list of the steps that residents of Baltimore can take to acquire the leverage and a decisive voice in this matter. You mentioned pressure on the council. Well, it has to be a lot of pressure on the council. You mentioned, having a voice, at least the legislative process in Annapolis. The session is at the halfway mark now. So most of the legislation that's going to be passed has been filed. In fact, I've had at least 2 hearings already, and that have also met and passed the crossover deadline. So not a lot new is going to happen in Annapolis on this question at this point, unfortunately. But we would want you, Lisa, please, to spell out steps you think residents of Baltimore can and should take to exercise some leverage on this matter, and Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition will help you get that message out. Now I want to ask you another question. Go right ahead, you're about to speak.
So I think, the 3 most important things you can do, contact the mayor's office, let them know that you're against this project. Second thing, contact your city council person, let them, him or her, know that you're against this project. The third thing is, Senator Ferguson, the president of the Senate, is the senator representing the 46th district and this area, Westport. He has not taken a public position on maglev. Brooke Learman, who is running for comptroller and also represents the 46th district in the House, has not taken a public position on maglev. Those folks need to be contacted. They need to hear that, this is yet another instance of a Black community that's threatened with some public infrastructure project, just like the Highway to Nowhere, that is speculative, that would carve it up, and that would block our children at Westport Academy, of which there are many really cute little kids, who would be blocked from the waterfront and its usage and all of the possibilities that rest with that. So those are really the critical pieces. We've asked all elected officials that have accepted money from maglev, folks from BWRR, to return that money. Senator Ferguson has accepted money from them. I was told by his staff that it was too complicated for him to return the money, that it would send the wrong message, that accepting a campaign donation from BWRR influenced him in any way, and his staffer denied that it would influence him in any way. I can't speak for Senator Ferguson, but what I can say is that, it makes a statement to your constituents when you don't take a public position against the project that is going to damage the community that you represent, but you do take campaign contributions from that same entity.
Let me mention this, Lisa, and it's for broad consumption and distribution. District 46, Senator Ferguson, Delegate Learman, Delegate Lewis, that's Robin Lewis,
Mm-hmm.
Luke Clippinger. They have made a very interesting choice in these past two elections. They call themselves Team 46.
Mm-hmm.
Now, without casting aspersions, and we can do that at any moment, we want our audience to go to their websites, Team 46, and look at what they have campaigned on since 2018.
Yeah.
Here's what is also important. Baltimore's population is 67% Black and brown people, and that's certainly an undercount.
Mm-hmm.
But in 46 is 60% white.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the members of Team 46, the senator and the 3 delegates, campaigned on crime since 2018. Crime. And when you campaign on crime, you're saying you have no confidence that Baltimore can prosper.
Mm-hmm.
Crime is a dead-end campaign. But who does it attract? Okay, it's a sensational campaign. You have to make people fear.
Oh, yeah.
And then do nothing but promote some sort of a crime against or fight against crime. Now, we know there's a problem there, but Learman, Lewis, Ferguson, Clippinger all call themselves transit advocates. And this is a transit infrastructure issue. So I want to let our audience know, go look at what they say they can, what they do. You know, there's always that idea of talking progressive and acting regressive.
Yes.
We want people to know who this group, this constellation, Gang of Four, who they are, what they really do. They talk transit infrastructure, okay, but not transit infrastructure that serves the people of Baltimore. Okay, now, to move on to another question. I am, as the representative of the Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition, also a member of the city's Transit or Transportation Commission of the Baltimore City. And they're asking for some ideas from us. And they know already, because we've sort of begun insinuating what we want to do. And I've wanted to make sure that we talk with you in our show, or at least I had a chance to speak with you, whether broadcast or not, about this question. There is no connectivity, real connectivity of transportation to job centers
Mm-hmm.
for much of the workforce in South Baltimore, Westport, Mount Winans, Cherry Hill, Brooklyn, you name it. For example, people who live over in the Brooklyn side, and there are others, of course, who want to go to work in Trade Point Atlantic.
Yes.
Okay, how do they get across the Patapsco? How do they get across Patapsco? They go around the harbor. They go around the Middle Branch.
Yeah.
And try to find a number 63 to get them into Trade Point Atlantic, or 163. But that's not the way to run a transit service. So what we are doing, what BTEC wants to do, and we've begun taking a look at this, and I want your opinion. Maybe we can talk later about what you see.
Mm-hmm.
But we're proposing a northern loop and a southern loop for extension and expansion of the Charm City Circulator.
Yes.
Okay, beyond the White L.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that Charm City Circulator extension can be, I think, and we're hoping that if we can get some support from the city, because we will need a municipal co-applicant for federal funds under one of several fund programs, whether it's RAISE, Build Back Better, the so-called bipartisan infrastructure plan, the American Rescue Plan, Justice 40. But the point is, with $20 million, we can buy 10 buses, 750,000 each. You know, let's say make that 800,000. That's $8 million. And with that $20 million, $12 million left over to cover operational costs for a decade. Now we've tried pricing it out, and it looks as though we really are talking about maybe upwards of $30 to $40 million.
Wow.
But that's funds from the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're not asking the city to put up $40 million. But we do know that the Charm City Circulator garages in Cherry Hill, but doesn't serve Cherry Hill. Okay, what kind of insult is that to the people of Cherry Hill?
Well, it's huge. It's a huge insult for a few reasons. I mean, for the obvious reason, but also, listen, every time somebody from DC gets good and ready, I think Pete Buttigieg has been over here a few times in Baltimore. But where is the commitment to the Baltimore average citizen or resident get to the job centers, as you say? Don't just come over here for a photo op, Secretary of Transportation Buttigieg. Come over here to tell us how you were going to help with connectivity. You know, one of the things that, Baltimore has suffered the last, 8 years with this very poor transit approach from the state government. We lost the Red Line. The bus system got revamped, and it doesn't, really make any sense. I think the bus system is still by and large based on the old maids routes. That's what
you ask riders, they say it's worse than before.
Right. It's worse.
Denounced.
And, and the reliability is terrible. I have a student going to Poly. It really should only take him, kind of like 15 minutes. There's a bus right outside of our house. Sometimes the bus comes, sometimes it doesn't come. They leave kids stranded. It's just a hot mess. So what I want to see from the federal government and from the Biden administration is not just a photo op in Baltimore, but I want to see I want to see them fund the Charm City Circulator extension that you're talking about.
Yes.
There's also an opportunity, we as a signatory or partner organization for the communities that are signatories to the Community Benefits Agreement with Covington, there is a transportation committee. One of the things that they have been talking about for the last few years is the lack of connectivity between the neighborhoods, but then also between the job centers, between the South Baltimore neighborhoods and even the city, and not for nothing, but to quality grocery opportunities. You have to go in town and then back out town to get to the Aldi's that's out there.
Yes.
Boulevard.
Over in Brooklyn.
Right. It is bananas. So we support the federal government. And the question is I don't know. Right. Our Team 46, are they talking to Senator Cardin about this? Are they talking to folks about the investment in Baltimore? We don't know. I don't know what the details are with the ARPA funds dedicated to transit for the city. We get a large kind of announcement, but where are the details for that?
Well, we have to do a couple of things, and you raise a couple of interesting issues. First of all, BTEC is going to try to arrange a meeting at soon, next couple of weeks, at your convenience, and we want to have you take a look at the maps or if it's possible, ride around a little bit in South Baltimore and talk about where that route should be. Okay. Okay. For a Charm City Circulator Southern Loop, we have a plan for a Northern Loop and then a Southern Loop. Okay. And we need it.
We do.
And the idea that it's a circulator and free, look, if the city doesn't have to bear the bulk of the cost, why do we need any complaints? Okay. Right. But keep this in mind. President of the Senate, Bill Ferguson, and Speaker of the House, Adrian Jones, Delegate Adrian Jones, I want to be respectful. They promised at the beginning of this session that this would be the equity session. That they would spare no effort in making certain that equity was the most prominent product of this session of the legislature. You might have an idea of how we think that has developed. If
You know, we need the thing is we need a champion, right? So we've had some really good gains when it comes to how we deal with children and the carceral system this legislative session, largely in large measure because we've had a champion in Joe Carter. We've had
yes,
folks who have really kind of have been working this issue for years, and they have been able to get some wins this legislative session. Who is the champion for Baltimore City transit in a way that really, is not just for the, kind of the central business district and the convenience of the haves? We need a champion for, folks who are just trying to make it every day, who are trying to get to those job centers. And some of these jobs are not
you're frozen for a moment, Lisa. So hold on 1 second.
I don't know.
Are you back yet? Try it again. Your vision is,
Wait,
visuals are okay now, but can you hear me well? We'll hold just a minute because sometimes the internet is unstable and it freezes right when we're having this discussion.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Can you hear me well?
Can.
Okay, take a minute longer because we need this to stabilize.
So I think that the issue is we need a champion for trans equity in the legislature, not just for the half, but for every person connected to those services that we need in jobs. So that really.
Excuse me 1 second, Lisa. Minister Smith, do you hear her well?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
You don't? Is that yes
it's
or
breaking
no?
up. No, I cannot. I think it's breaking up. The internet has kind of. But see if you can get it now, Lisa. See if you can come through. Can you?
No, not yet.
How's that?
Not good yet. Now, there's not much we can do until it stabilizes, and sometimes a banner will appear on the screen that you wouldn't see that says the internet is unstable. But if you don't mind, we'll just take a minute and just sort of battle through this. It's 8:57, and we don't really have to rush. If you have another 5, 6 minutes, 7 minutes or so, but we want it to be clear to our audience because we'll have a link and hopefully we can distribute this later. Okay, here we go. I think we're good now because your visual is now pretty fluid. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can.
Okay, you were speaking about the need for a champion.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, the gains that we made this legislative session, for example, in the area of juvenile justice and children being treated fairly in the carceral system, were made because there was a champion in Senator Carter. She's been working on this for many years, has developed a good coalition, and was able to move some legislation forward. We need a similar champion for transit equity that is really going to, move the ball forward, not just for the convenience of, the haves, but for, the everyday folks.
Good. Senator Jill Carter, by the way, is the co-sponsor of our piece of legislation called the Transportation Equity Act of 2022. Delegate Sheila Ruth in the House, and we got passed from, it was voted out of the House into the Senate, and we got it voted out of the Finance Committee in the Senate. So it looks good, and things are much better than last year when we also proposed this piece of legislation. We had an excessive fiscal note that always appeared to be a barrier. But you see, now we have a fiscal note that's less than $1 million, down $780,000 a year for 5 years. And people still talking about why we can't pass it. You see, in other words, the fiscal note was always just a pretext.
Right.
Okay. There were some other issues. And one of the issues is, of course, MDOT doesn't want it highlighted that they don't comply with the protections of Title VI.
Mm.
Okay. But we can go on and we can call this a victory at this point because we've gotten this passed and we can build on it in the next session. And you're correct. Senator Jill Carter has been a champion for us in the Senate. And we've gotten this far with what's called the Transportation Equity Act of 2022. And it looks good. We had no opposition in the hearings. Two
Right.
hearings in the main committees in the Senate and the House, and then hearing and discussion where it was referred in the House to the Land Use and Ethics Committee, oddly enough, but that's a subcommittee of the Environment and Transportation Committee. So we've done well, and we're sort of keeping not quite fingers crossed because we know you don't get anything we don't fight for, but we're proud of the sponsorship that we've had in this session, and we celebrate them. Delegate Sheila Ruth in the House, and of course the
Right.
inimitable Senator Jill Carter in the Senate. Now we want to go on to this, and I think I want to have you close us out on your message to our audience in Baltimore of your priorities for Westport and say the balance of this year. And then we'll have a comment from our co-host, Minister Smith, before we close our broadcast tonight.
So, I'll say I'm very excited because there's a new slate of legislation to combat vacant housing, actually, that is being going through the City Council. I think put forth by Councilmember Ramos to up the cost of vacant housing, fines, a different tax structure. There's legislation going through the state to allow the city to have a different tax structure for vacant housing. We are kind of like ground zero for predatory property owners. So that is beyond maglev. I mean, obviously maglev is a huge issue for us. The vacant housing issue is we are going full force against that. We are really trying to advocate for that legislation to make it just too expensive for folks to have vacant property and not place it in service and not do something with it. And we've seen the danger of having vacant property with the fires that have happened recently. So there's that. But on the upside, we're doing so many positive things. We're combating food insecurity. We are bringing together our neighbors. We are planning for a robust waterfront experience for all. So those are some good things that are happening in South Baltimore and Westport, Lakeland, Mount Winans, and St. Paul. We've got some great employers. We've got Sherwin-Williams. We've got Orlando Products. We've got Royal Farm. We've got some really great folks and things going on. As well, we have the Housing Authority of Baltimore City that has Westport Homes, and they have reached out. We've reached out to them, and they're willing to partner with us to help deliver some quality programming for the residents. So we're all about collaboration. We're all about, kind of leveraging the good that we have, but as well, we will take it to you if you are trying to take it from us, I will say.
Okay, Minister Smith.
Yes, I would agree with Lisa. There are some things moving through the city council. The planning department is also working on a process that will shorten receivership, which will help people trying, organizations like Lisa trying to develop housing and get rid of these vacants. But we have to be resolute and we have to come together and join forces that what benefits one community benefits Baltimore as a whole. So I'm very optimistic of things that are happening, and some of the progress we're making in certain areas. But the main thing is, realistically speaking, if we have jumpstart like the Red Line project with 10,000 jobs and $2 to $5 billion in transit-oriented development, Baltimore will not reach its potential. We need a project to kickstart this city, and it would help with public safety. When people get jobs, they don't have time to be out in the street shooting each other. Those are the things that are holding Baltimore back. So hopefully we can get the mayor to come out and forcibly advocate for the building of the Red Line. We say that the funding comes from commitment, and the city needs to commit to building the Red Line, to commit with a couple of the bills that the mayor put forth and coming out of the city council to get rid of this vacancy problem, to shorten the process. We need action now, and it takes the rest of Baltimore to make sure this happens.
Thank you so much, Glenn. You've touched on a few things that sort of wanted to highlight, but with our guest, I want to make it absolutely clear. Lisa Hodges, you've made a dent in the prospects for Baltimore, not just South Baltimore. I know that you have a team, and I know that the team is hardworking, and these are people who are dedicated to improving the quality of life. Not just housing, but the quality of life for the folks in South Baltimore. And it's not just Westport. So we're aware that you have a team, but we also know that leadership and the quality of leadership makes a big difference as well. So we applaud you. We've been looking for you. We've searched for you.
Thank
We're
you.
proud that you have agreed to be our guest, but we want to keep a commitment. One, you let us know what it takes for residents to get some leverage. B-Tech will help spread that message. Two, we want you to help us take a look at what constitutes reasonable, practical bus routes, a bus route for a southern loop of the Charm City Circulator. We also want to make it clear to our folks that the Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition, we're involved in what can only be called the application of the most fundamental principle that humans have developed over the last few thousand years, that you first build the foundation. And what we mean by that is that not only will the Red Line Light Rail project bring 10,000 jobs to Baltimore. Remember, we've got a governor who canceled it, but then he goes around saying that all we have is crime, poverty, and unemployment in Baltimore. Mm. And we know that with all that, mentioned this, with all that horror in Charlottesville in 2017, I say it all the time, because we had skinheads, we had Nazis, we had Klans people, and we had them kill people with cars and so on, driving in the crowds. Okay, but not one skinhead, not one Nazi, not one Klans person evaporated 10,000 jobs that would have stabilized Black communities in a city like Baltimore. Okay, but Larry Hogan did. We call them racists, and we call him a moderate Republican. Now, something else. Our grasp of this situation means also that when you encounter structural racism, you've got to make structural change. We have a number of different formulations, but among those, the mantra in the industry is development follows rail. Buses follow development. And we've added, the money will follow the commitment. Senators Van Hollen and Cardin put language in the infrastructure bill that simply says, without spelling it out, red line, that priority projects like the Red Line that were shovel ready when Hogan came to office, they have a priority. Remember, a lot of the folks in the Department of Transportation now are veterans of the Obama administration who made sure that Red Line had that record of decision and $900 million grant from the federal government that Hogan gave back. And we don't want to talk about what he did with the other money because he sprinkled around the state in white areas of his rural base to guarantee his reelection. That worked. But what we're getting at now is we need the fight back. And we need the kind of connections, the kind of community outreach, the community planning, the team, and we can talk about transportation when you find it appropriate for meetings or conferences of the Westport Economic Development Corporation. We want to share these ideas, but we know that to fight this, we also must, when we say meet structural racism with structural change, we are conducting a ballot access petition campaign to raise 10,000 valid petitions by August 1st to get on the ballot in November.
Yes.
We want to put a question to the voters. Do you support compelling the city of Baltimore to take the first steps in creating a Baltimore Regional Transportation Authority, very much like WMATA in Washington, D.C. In fact, that's the difference between Baltimore and Washington, D.C. since 1975.
Yep.
WMATA, the Metro rail system with its buses as limbs and the rail system as the trunk, because you build from the foundation. Buses are not the foundation. There's no major city in this country with its public transportation system anchored by a bus.
Right.
Now, we have a couple of hours of details we can share with you. But we want the partnership with the Westport.
I think 100% we can do that. We believe that we need a regional transportation authority. We believe that is the only way that, especially now, we need to leverage the fact that we have the county executives surrounding Baltimore who are Democrats and who appear to believe in regional solutions to our equity issues and our workforce development issues. And so we absolutely believe that is the thing, especially in Westport, because we are in Southern Baltimore. And so we do have connectivity to, Baltimore County.
Yes.
And so our solutions are not only a Baltimore City solution to us. Oddly enough, right, we have a light rail station in Westport, and the folks who use them, by and large, are those folks who come in to buy drugs and commute back out to wherever they come from. We need to have that light rail stop service our residents and get our residents to job centers rather than importing drug users to our neighborhood.
Thank you, Lisa. And we want to make sure that your audience, also our audience, knows as well that they can reach us on Facebook, on our website. You can look for us, Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition, on Facebook, and you can see how to get your petitions and how to help us in this petition drive. 10,000 petitions by August 1st, and we're on the ballot, and we can put this question to the voters because that's the beginning of Baltimore changing its own destiny. We don't have to wait for anybody. There's no one to wait for. You know how we can only say the future you create for yourself is the only future you don't have to fear. So friends, and Lisa.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so very much for being our guest.
Bye.
Been a pleasure. Been a pleasure. God bless.
Okay. Glenn, I think we're the only two left.
We're still live.
Yeah. So I'm just going to say thank you very much for being our co-host for the evening, of course. And the kind of welcome and reception for Attorney Lisa Hodges, Executive Director of the Westport Community Economic Development Corporation. Good night, friends.
Thank you for being a co-host as well. You do a fantastic job, and we're getting better and better and better. Good
Thank
night.
you so